Hello, and welcome back to another week of the LA Times College Football Roundtable. I'm Ryan Kartje, USC beat writer for the Times, joined as always by Ben Bolch, our UCLA beat writer. Ben, good to see you. How was your Labor Day weekend?
Long night at the Rose Bowl. They were down 20 to nothing very quickly into the game, and things did not get any better for the Bruins. It was probably the most deflating season opener. This was my 10th year on the beat, and this probably was the worst season opener I've seen UCLA perform. So, really rough start all the way around. A lot of buzz about Nico Yamiliava. He completed 50% of his passes and I would say was okay and showed a lot of potential to be, a really good player. But the defense, man, it was awful. Couldn't make tackles, gave up 492 yards, and really slow and out of position on pretty much every play. So a lot of things to work on going forward, a lot of red flags, and that's not a good place to be just 1 week into the season.
A much different tone across town at USC, where USC just absolutely wallops Missouri State, scoring 73 points, the most they've scored in a game since 1930. Obviously, not a lot you can take from that game, which is why I want to focus first on UCLA. Ben, Deshaun Foster came into last season and had a very slow start, but it felt to me like this felt different. Like there should have been at least some progress starting into year two, and it just certainly wasn't there.
Well, I mean, the one kind of built-in excuse I think they have is that they did have 57 new players and 8 new assistant coaches, and that was always going to be kind of a work in progress, but it just looked like a completely disorganized mess. And I think that's the big problematic takeaway is that, like, where do you go from here, right? I mean, there was really no positives to build on, no facets that were strengths to kind of go forward with. I mean, the run game wasn't good. As I said, Nico completed only 50% of his passes, and the defense just missed so many tackles. I think Pro Football Focus said it was like 14, but I think it felt like there were 14 on some plays. So I'm not sure that was an accurate total, but it was just kind of a mess and nobody really stepped up in any sort of meaningful way. I always look for players to like write features on after a game, and honestly, there was nobody deserving of that game. Anthony Woods, maybe the running back who caught a 19-yard touchdown pass, and it's kind of a cool story because he sat out all of last year with an ACL injury. But man, it was a bleak, bleak night at the Rose Bowl.
Certainly seems like it was as bad as it looked, at least initially from my perspective. But at USC, I wonder. It's a question in week one. Certainly, how much can you really take from just a single game? It was the first game of the year, like you said. A ton of new players in your game. For USC, I know a lot of fans are riding high, certainly after beating a team by 60, but there's just so little you can take from a game, especially like USC's. Uh, certainly a lot of positive signs to take away. Jade Mayava, USC's quarterback, had a strong debut, 15 of 17, really only had two incompletions that were, deep throws down the field. Houston Longstreet, the five-star freshman quarterback, got to play an entire half. And certainly showed some flashes of the talent that he has. But, I think we're going to see a little bit more this upcoming week with USC facing off against Georgia Southern. Probably the most important subtext of that game being that it's Clay Helton's return to the Coliseum, a place where he spent 12 years as a coach, the last half of that as a head coach. That not a lot of people have many fond memories of. Certainly, that was the beginning of my time as USC beat writer. But
Any
he
chance they pull the upset? Any chance that Clay Helton gets his revenge?
I will say I think Georgia Southern is certainly a better team than Missouri State. I would have a hard time seeing a team that just gave up, almost 300 yards rushing to Fresno State is able to slow down USC, which their rushing attack looked great in week one. So you would never rule it out. I mean, certainly some weird things have happened when Clay Helton is in the Coliseum, and usually those weird things go against USC. So uh, we'll see how that is. But I actually got to speak to Clay earlier this week. Still the same guy as ever for UCLA. Uh, Obviously, disappointing debut. They're playing a team that they should beat in UNLV. What are you expecting to see out of them this week?
Well, it's interesting because Coach Deshaun Foster said they were close against Utah, which I th took as kind of an ominous sign, to be honest, if you're a UCLA fan, because in no way were they close. I mean, I think he's trying to put an upbeat and positive spin on a terrible loss, which I kind of understand, but they weren't close in any facet of that game. I mean, I guess he could say like, we almost wrapped up guys on certain tackles and almost made catches. There was a couple of overthrows that were bang bang plays that could have maybe swung some momentum a little bit. But let's be honest, they were blown out and looked terrible. So they need to do a complete 180. It starts with tackling better. That's been an emphasis and a focus in practice this week is actually tackling and bringing guys down. So let's see what they do. This week, I think will actually tell us more than last week. They really need to look like a competent football team that can put a good defense on the field. They really need to hold UNLV, I think, less than 24 points to really show credibility. And obviously, they need to win the game. So huge week for unexpectedly huge week for UCLA.
They should try to hire a guy like Danton Lynn to be their defensive coordinator. Maybe he
Well,
could come in and turn
it's
around.
funny you say that. Kaika Malloy, their defensive coordinator, I have a lot of respect for. I think he does a great job. And that was one of the things that was most shocking to me was that not only was the players, slow and out of position, but the scheme didn't make sense. They had the wrong guys, spying Devin Dampier, Utah's quarterback, guys who really could not keep up with him in terms of foot speed and were always out of position. So really baffling start, not just for the players, but from a coaching standpoint. So a lot to prove from the players and the staff this week against UNLV.
Big week coming up for UCLA, big reunion coming up for USC. A lot of interesting stuff to talk about, I'm sure, next time you join us on this college football roundtable. We'll be back on Monday with no holiday next week, and we will talk to you then.